Episode 100. Oh, man. Are you as excited about this as I am?
It's an adjustment, being on camera.
It is. Yeah, the whole camera thing. That's the biggest difference between episode 1 and now is the video aspect, isn't it? You got into nursing school.
UNBC, Northern Baccalaureate of Nursing. So I'm in a fast track program that's 5 semesters, so about 18 months.
Why is it like the conscious part is numbed with a great big ass needle, but then your brain is able to kind of keep everything else going?
Are pretty cool. When we learn about this stuff, I'm like, wow, like our bodies are so cool. Like just everything it does for us that we don't even have to ever think about.
Well, if we have accents, how come everybody on TV and movies and radio and everything sound like us? But then when you travel, everyone else has an accent and they say we're the ones with the accent. Isn't it weird when they point something out and then you have a hard time actually saying, well, how is I pronouncing that? Like bag? How do I actually say that?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah, and then you're like, wait, how do I even talk?
Just made a post on Facebook and then I posted on Instagram. And then anybody that submitted a question, we bring that to this podcast. I'm gonna send him a mug. Wow, I was expecting people to start chirping me here.
Wow, they want to know the questions of the world.
Yeah, it's an interesting question. I think a lot of people. I like it though. Yeah,
lots of reflection. This episode.
I don't even know what that means.
More modulation.
More modulation.
We need more modulation. Just dive right in.
Sure.
Kaylie and Jade Willeboordse.
Yeah, that's the name.
Episode 100. Oh, man. Are you as excited about this as I am?
It's an adjustment, being on camera.
It is. Yeah, the whole camera thing. It's a little bit to kind of the comfort zone. Yeah. After you get going, usually it kind of disappears. That's the biggest difference between episode 1 and now is the video aspect, isn't it? Should we give the listener, I guess, a heads up who you are?
Probably, yeah.
Okay, Kaylie Willeboordse. So last time you were on this podcast was episode 1. You were the first guest ever.
I was.
That's badass. Feel the same now as you did back then?
Yeah, still awkward. Yeah.
Well, thanks for doing it. It's pretty cool. I appreciate it. Episode 100, I was like, man, what do I do? Like, how am I going to hit it? Like, you go through all the, I don't know, ideas and options, and then you're like, oh, it's got to be the coolest special guest ever. Well, who's the best?
The right person.
Well, exactly. Episode 1, and then I'm like, well, okay, 100, and then I'll have to get you on every 200, 200, 300, maybe one every 100 episodes.
Well, I think that's a lot of Kaylie.
Well, you'd be surprised. Every 2 years, you never know. It's not too bad. I don't think we can get enough. Next thing you know, you're going to be co-hosting.
Is that your hope?
You never know. I think if it would be somebody would definitely work the best with you. That's for sure. Gonna have to get you through the nursing school. Finish that up though. That way, when I get old enough, you can keep me alive and just kick me off to the side and take over.
You don't want to be in a nursing home?
There's nothing about that. This sounds very fun for me. How's that, Mike?
That's all right. Just
pull it right in there. If you break it, you're doing me a favor. I'm looking for a reason to buy a new one.
You're like, oh, sorry, Kaylie broke it.
Yeah.
Oops.
Episode 1, that was back in July 2021. That's when it was posted. Yeah. It's quite a while ago now, isn't it? Time flies.
That's March 2024.
Right now it is, yeah. March 2nd. So on that episode, we talked about, you had just graduated, grade 12. And then that was right when COVID hit. And your whole graduation ceremony and all that kind of stuff was disrupted. They kind of did a little bit of a weird little, I don't know even what you would call that. Ceremony? Is that what you would call that?
Intimate ceremony?
Yeah, it was pretty small and kind of like a little bit of a drive-through session where we walked through it. So of course we talked about that, the COVID, the shots, Of course, you were talking about getting into nursing. We hit on some politics. I do remember one of the statements you said was Trudeau legalized weed. I think that's all we were able to scramble for a positive. And then we talked a little bit about work.
My work, your work?
No, I think it was my work because you came out when you were 16.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we talked on that a little bit. So I thought for this episode, staying true to unscripted, but still wanting to prepare. I don't know. I do feel a little bit unprepared.
You knew it was coming.
Yeah, I did. I was harassing you for it. And so I was like, well, how do we go about it? So I thought we would just kind of do a bit of an update on you and kind of see how things are going and your thoughts on different topics. Definitely about the podcast. There's some questions that I threw out there about an hour and a half ago before recording just for people to kind of throw out there. And we're going to do a giveaway for some of the mugs that I've got, Kevin Unscripted mugs, and address, I guess, the podcast as far as why I got into it, how it's been over the last couple of years. Oh,
so it's like almost like I'm going to be interviewing you now.
Back and forth for sure. Well, this is like the, what do they call that? Like an interview? See if you can be the co-host. Oh. So let's start out with, okay, since July 2021, you got into nursing school. Yeah. So you're in your fourth year?
Third year. Third year.
And how's that going?
Oh, man. How's it going? It's going. No, it's
You're
good.
Busy. You're so freaking loaded with work because you're working full time.
No, I'm not even working anymore.
No?
Too busy.
Man, see, I need a podcast to get caught up to speed.
I know, that's how busy I am.
Yeah, break it down. What's going on?
So basically, how's it going? For those who don't know, I did a 2-year associate's degree program at Northern Lights College here in Fort St. John.
Yeah. And
it's a specific program that they created specifically for my UNBC Northern Baccalaureate of Nursing. So I'm in a fast track program that's 5 semesters, so about 18 months, instead of just doing the whole 4 years. Oh. So I did my 2-year degree that gave me all the prerequisites I needed for this program. So, man, I've been busy.
No kidding.
Man. So I was working full time until about October 2023, and then I just had to cut it. So I pick up shifts here and there, and
so how are you managing with that? Because you are living on your own. You've got all the bills and overhead costs, increase in living like everybody else is experiencing. Living in Fort St. John with your fiance, that's also a new little upgrade since episode
the last one. Yeah.
But how are you managing all of that? Plus going to school full time, like that is a heavy workload, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a lot. It's pretty busy. I mean, academics in general is pretty heavy workload, but I mean, you just got to do what you got to do. I've known that I've wanted to do nursing for pretty much my whole life. So that was my goal, and I'm almost done. I've got a year left. So
yeah, light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Yeah.
So when you're going through all of this though, especially maybe at the beginning of a semester when you've got, you're cramming for, trying to study, maybe some tests, there's got to be moments. What do you use to get through the moments that you possibly, you're going through where you're like, man, this is a little bit overwhelming. I wonder if this is kind of sustainable. Am I doing the kind of quality of schooling and everything else that's going to allow me to achieve the goals, especially at the standard that you're holding yourself to? Like, is there moments that you're like, oh, okay, maybe I need to reevaluate, and like, how do you get through that?
Oh, wow. That's a big one.
I think a lot of people probably have those moments. So,
oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. Last semester was like the worst semester I've ever done. It's just jam-packed. You're learning from 0 to 100. Like, the amount of stuff I've learned in one semester is crazy. I did pretty much 3 years of like nursing aspect of schooling in a semester. So that's pretty fast paced. But
so when they do that though, how are they condensing that information? Is it the same amount of information in a shorter timeline, or do they try and abbreviate some areas and cut through, like fast track it, so to speak?
I think the best way to look at it is a traditional 4-year registered nurse program is you're doing academics, like in terms of like English and biology and psychology and all those other fluffy courses incorporated with your actual like nursing specific courses. Whereas I did all of that stuff in my undergrad, and then I'm just focusing on nursing now. So there's a pro that I don't have to worry about some other courses like psychology or English or whatever have you, and I can just focus on what I'm doing. But it's pretty condensed. I mean, for a couple courses like pharmacology, which is like a course about medications, and then pathophysiology, which is like disease processes in the body. Those ones were probably not as in depth as I'd like them to for my practice, but you just do a lot of external studying. So you do whatever you have in class, and then I don't know, last semester it's just like take it one day at a time.
Take on the workload to try and get through it.
Because it was so much. Like looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, how did I even do all of that while working? Oh. But I mean, I have a great group. There's 8 of us in my cohort, and we're all pretty close. So we support on each other a lot, and the instructors are really amazing. They're all nurses. So they've been in our shoes at one point or the other, and they know what we're going through. So they really try and support you like to the best of their capability. Yeah. So I think that's like a really big help, having somebody in your corner. And they like really worked with you. Like if you were like we just can't do this. We have 10 assignments this week. Like we don't even know what to do. Like they're really like, okay, like what can we help you with?
Voice that together, like the 8 of you with one opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So that's got to have a huge amount of, that in itself is a voice that's allowing you to be able to make, you know, opinions a lot more clear and definitive than if you were to just go to your instructor on an individual basis.
Well, and you got to think like a lot of programs have, like in bigger cities, they've got 200, 300 people in a class. You don't even know your instructor. Your instructor's never even seen your face.
Really?
Yeah.
It's online?
No, just like think of like UBCO, like, or just like a really big college or university. They've got hundreds of students. Yeah. They unless you make it a point to see them after like in their office hours, they'll never even see you. Oh. They'll see your name on their assignments and that's it.
Yeah. Crazy. So there's definitely a little bit more of an intimate ability. Yeah. FaceTime, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I mean, we all develop a relationship with our instructors. I mean, we're with them. My one instructor we had 4 classes with. I was with them 4 or 5 days a week for hours. So you build a definite relationship with them, and then your classmates. There's 8 of us, so
it's a small group.
Yeah, we get along really well, which is great.
So that element is that element kind of what has gotten you through those moments we first talked about?
Oh, for sure. I mean, because I know like nursing school. I remember telling you this probably a couple months ago. It's humbling, and I don't know any other way to put it but humbling, and like you got to have people there for you for that. So the girls I'm with, they understand what I'm going through because they're in the same shoes. So if I'm struggling with something, they're right there to pick me back up. I mean, we all joke because last semester we call it Hell Week, and it was about right when finals were happening, and it was horrible. It was rough. So we got off of school kind of a week before our exams, but we had these clinical skills exams. So like our skills that we had to show plus like normal written exams. Yeah. And one night we were in the lab until 11 p.m. practicing for our skills exams. There was a couple of us. So
do you have a lot of those late nights where you're
not that
up?
Late, but
oh, okay.
Oh yeah. Like at home for sure. For sure.
Late night study,
Oh,
cramming, trying to get it in
Just
there.
trying to get anything in, especially like the amount of assignments like you have on a regular basis and everything. This semester is a lot better just because we have less courses and a lot of the projects like go into each other for like a final project.
Yeah.
But I mean, we joked because we ended up getting bangs last semester, about 5 of us.
You got what?
Bangs. Like bangs.
Oh, on a haircut. Oh,
Yeah.
I see.
And we're like, it's bad when you get bangs. Like, it was our crisis. So we like to joke about that. But I mean,
I didn't notice that. And you've got a headband.
I got a headband on. I'm growing them out. The crisis is over. So now I'm like, it wasn't a good decision.
It's not the look you're going for.
Oh, no. It was a crisis thing.
That's how you get through it.
That's how you just got to joke about it.
That's awesome.
But,
I'd rather you go cut bangs in a crisis than what the other options could be.
Yeah.
So the humbling aspect, though, let's touch on that a little bit because that's a bit of a unique comment to make as far as the humbling. What do you mean by that?
Oh, I don't even know. I don't even know how else to put it but that. I think...
Pushing a boundary that you didn't think was...
I think school is hard. All academics are hard. And I know, like, even going from a college to a university was a shift, but nursing school is hard. And everybody will tell you, but, like, obviously it's worth it for a reason. But no matter what, like, at every single point, you're getting critiqued because you need to. You need to make sure that you're doing your skills proper. You need to make sure that you're keeping patient safety in mind. So it's all necessary things, but it wears you out a little bit where... Even though I was super supported through it all, but like you always feel like you're doing something wrong. You're not performing to the best of your capability because we're students in a workplace environment. We want to impress everybody and show everybody like we're learning and like we're trying and, just kind of sponge all of the information in. But, you second guess yourself a lot and you get challenged a lot. And I remember last semester, I'm like, why is it every single time I come in here, I'm like doing something wrong? I'm like messing up, or why do I feel like my patient's situation is so challenging for me? And you just are always like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not doing it proper. And it's just like, that's what I think I mean a little bit by humbling. Just because you're dealing with people, that is our job. We're dealing with people and we're trying to care for them outside of just like what our patient sees. There's like a whole background of for us, we're spending an enormous amount of time researching medications because we can't give them unless we know, like we understand why, right?
Oh, yeah.
So because we're learning about medications, we're sitting there Googling it all. Well, we use an app, like a drug guide app, but doing all that and then like looking at maybe our patient's lab results to see if there's something we should monitor there, and just like all this stuff that kind of goes on behind the scenes that we're learning that makes it very overwhelming on top of you're dealing with people. So if you mess up, there's a lot
there's
a bigger risk.
Well, it's also figuring out, I think, a sense of comfortability and knowledge and ability to work within the environment too, because you're not going to be as efficient when it comes to administering certain medications if you already know what those medications are. I'm sure some are very common versus others. And you're treating every medication like it's the first one that you normally later on in your career won't have to try and actually research and get an understanding about. So I can understand, everything would be overwhelming in the moment. Has that element though, do you know yourself better in that? Like where the threshold is, where the levels of fatigue management are? Do you have a better sense of kind of where your limits are and how to manage them?
Yeah, I think I've always been kind of one to work myself down, kind of work until I can't work no more. I like to keep myself busy, and I try and, I mean, I know in the past, like I was working full time and going to school full time. So I'm definitely used to like those late night, on the go, the fatigue really getting to you. But yeah, I definitely had to like learn how to manage the burnout a little bit, just because I'm not even in the workforce yet. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like it's draining. Nursing school, can't even afford to get sick a day, because if you miss a lab, then you have to work out another date to do it, and then you're behind, and you can't miss clinicals, and it's just because you got to meet your like clinical hour requirements for the semester. So it's definitely like a, oh my gosh, what am I doing? How do I do this? But I mean, I think I'm still learning it. Still don't know quite where my boundaries are. And
that is something I don't know. You're like, constantly learning that. It's kind of a love-hate thing. It's not something that you kind of get to the end of. I think what is a little bit more true to that is it seems easier as you go, because you learn how to manage it a little bit easier. And I think it's like I like using the gym as analogies for a lot of stuff, because the beginning, usually, you're sore and you don't know where those limits are, but the more you do it, the easier it is to get through a routine, and muscle memory and load management and everything else becomes a little bit more easier. But you always need to be able to hit that level of uncomfortable grind to be able to keep moving. And when you're in a situation that's high stress, high action, like the career that you're getting yourself into, there's going to be no shortage of that. And the human element really changes everything so much too. Like I noticed earlier in your schooling, you were taking a lot of psychology, which I think is at that time kind of took me by surprise. But I mean, thinking about it, it makes complete sense that that's probably a course that's going to be, you'll probably lean on that a little bit, won't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, depending on where you're working, most people are dealing with individuals, and when you're dealing with them, it's not like the highlight of their life. I mean, they're normally sick, right? Yeah. So then comes along like they're more poor mental health and just more irritable, maybe because they're just feeling crappy, and some of them feel embarrassed like when they're in the hospital, because they're not used to somebody taking care for them that way. And, we're doing pretty intimate things. Like, I can we obviously we're used to that, but somebody else might not used to me coming in and having to give them a bed bath or stuff like that. Right. So we always have to keep in mind like that aspect. Yeah. And then when families come in, that's a whole other aspect as well, which is great. I love to see families in with the individuals, but you are no longer caring for that individual. Now you're caring for a family
and an environment. You're managing people in a changing environment with high emotion.
Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely like the psychology, I think, was a super, super helpful thing to have. I mean, I did probably 5 or 6 courses, and even then I still feel like I could have done more. So we did like a lot of, I don't even know, human sciences. I don't even know. Health science courses, kind of just stuff like psychology, sociology, indigenous studies, all of that. Like, I didn't really think it would show up in my degree now, but it definitely does. So
you see where the application for it is?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, so this is a pilot program though. Like, this is the first year that they offered it this far north. Like, normally for the schooling.
I'm in the 3rd cohort ever. So I
thought this was the first one in northern BC. Oh.
So it's the 3rd year. The very first year had just graduated and are now working. Oh. And I've had the privilege to work with one of the graduates who was in the first cohort. And she works up on the med-surg floor. So,
oh, really?
Yeah. And there's a couple more I've seen throughout the hospital that are doing their career and everything. And it's great to see where I am is there's an end game. They were at where I am, and now seeing them working, I'm like, okay.
Well, and getting their feedback too.
Yeah.
They seem happy with the choice, like the course and how it's been played out.
Obviously there's some issues like through the course that we've all had to work out. I mean, it's the third year that they've run it. So there's definitely some growing pains and seeing what works for us and what doesn't, and trial and error for certain things.
Yeah.
But I mean, all in all, I think it's a great program. I'm
so when
glad
you're
that
done
they
with
have
the program, what are the options now with job placement? Like, is there certain regions or areas that you can pick and choose from, or is it open-ended, like province-wide, or how does that work?
You can work anywhere.
Right out of the schooling?
So once I graduate, I have to do my licensing exam. So it's called the NCLEX. So it's basically like the equivalent of like a board exam for a doctor, or whatever the lawyer exam is. It doesn't matter. Anyways, so it's my licensing exam, and then I'll be licensed in BC, and I can choose to stay here, or I can go to another province. But the thing with that is every province has different rules and regulations. So I'll have to get licensed in that province. But I mean, with nursing, you can, anywhere you want to go, you can go. UNBC also offers graduate programs for nurses. So then I can they have special like rural nursing programs. So that just lets you like open up your scope a lot more. So then you can work in like very, very rural places, like more rural than Fort St. John.
Well, I was going to say, I was going to be like,
no.
how rural are we really?
No, honestly, in the grand scheme of things, like we like to say we're rural, but we're really not, in terms of, you got to think of like the Northwest Territories, Yukon, that is pretty remote. Rural. Yeah, that's where
12
they
hours
have
just to get to the next.
No doctor. They have one nurse in a clinic doing everything. Pretty much got to get flied out for every single thing. Like,
so that's shift work. That's traveling nurse kind of stuff, though.
Yeah, travel. Yeah, that's pretty much what we have here is travel nurses. Which is pretty crazy.
Yeah. So has your perception or understanding of the medical system changed over the last couple of years, especially now that you're a lot more exposed, to that medical industry or profession more now than you were before?
Yeah, I think I have a great insight. I mean, I'm still a student, so I'm confined to what I've seen so far. I haven't worked in a lot of departments or anything, but I mean, I've gotten to know like the law of like the medical side of things a lot better, and like patient rights and stuff like that. So that's really great. And then we learn a lot, obviously, about our rights and responsibilities as like a healthcare provider. So we have, we're regulated by the College of British Columbia. So it's the BCCNM, which is like the British Columbia College of Nurses and Midwives. So we get in school, basically every single thing we talk about, it's like, go to BCCNM, because they have a whole list of pretty much everything that, like where our policies, regulations, everything, what we can do, it's all set by them. So that's like a whole new insight. I didn't even know about.
No kidding. There's so much more there.
Yeah, and then just like how much like every healthcare provider does, like in terms of, we do like a lot of team-based work here, and obviously healthcare, you need to be a team because not one profession can do everything. But even like nurses, they do a lot more than I thought. And sometimes when we're in school, we're all just like, we can do that? Really? Like, wow.
Well, definitely. I've been surprised a few times at what you're learning, and you're skirting right up against the line of where you're like, man, okay, we're almost getting into where you're getting a doctor education. Like, you're getting fairly in depth in a lot of areas.
I mean, not quite. I'm not doing like 12 years of school, but they are definitely pushing to open everybody's scope. So the scope of practice, like what we're able to do, even in terms of like LPNs, their scope is getting bigger. Care aides, their scope is getting bigger. Our scope is getting really big with extra like education in certain areas. We can actually prescribe, which is...
A nurse can prescribe?
Yeah, it's very limited. So actually one of my instructors has the extra education, and he can prescribe birth control. Only
I
like
see.
stuff
Okay.
like that. So
Yeah.
only like certain types, but that's
Yeah.
still one less thing that somebody has to make an appointment for that might
sure.
be months in advance that they have to wait for. So our scope is definitely getting bigger, which is great in terms of like how we can provide care. But I think it also is just a battle because we don't have as many healthcare professionals. They're just trying to.
You kind of skirted out of a little thing here. We were going to get you to do the needle thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got the video, and I'm not going to show too much of it, but you had to practice how to
I
the
did.
IV
Yes.
needle, and I squirm. I was kind of hoping you were, because I was psyching myself out a little bit.
But was it that bad?
It wasn't that bad, but I was like, okay, I don't like needles, and I don't know why. It's just one of those things. But when you did the needle on me in my arm earlier,
Yeah.
I was pretty squirmish. So this time I was like, okay, when she does it,
You're on camera.
Yeah.
Now you have to.
Exactly. I was just gonna put a face on, but
I did
maybe next time.
squirm out of that one. But yeah, we just learned that probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. Oh, even longer than that. Probably at the beginning of the semester, we learned like injections and everything. So subcutaneous, which is like in the fat, the adipose tissue, and then IM, so intramuscular, so like vaccines, and then intradermal, which is like a TB test, kind of just in the skin layer. And then we started with IVs and learned how to do all of that. So our whole semester so far has been learning how to do like IV medications and fluids. And
when you're
so I was
putting
practicing
the needle
on you,
though
yeah.
in the skin. No, like that. What is that one that you mentioned where it's in the skin?
intradermal.
Interdermal.
Yeah.
You have to put a needle in between the skin layers.
Yeah. So yeah,
how does that work?
It's a pretty small needle. Have you ever gotten a TB test?
No.
Oh, okay. So
Which test? A TB?
like a tuberculosis test.
No.
Yeah. So really interesting. Okay. So I've had to get a couple because of my schooling, but and my work. But yeah, so I don't know why I'm showing you on my hand, but yeah, you just do it like in the skin layers. It's a small needle and you go at a like really low degree. So you know how when I did an IV on you, I was kind of at a little bit of an angle.
Like a 45 degree
Well,
kind
I
of.
wasn't quite that high, but yeah. So I was at an angle, and then this one is, I think it's like a 5 degree.
Wow.
Yeah, it's not much
Just
at
a
all.
tiny little needle.
And then
Because that one you gave me, I'm pretty sure you used that for epidural, like it was a huge, it looked like a sword. Oh, it was massive.
you know what?
You took that piece off and it sounded like a sheath coming off a sword. Like that thing was massive.
Oh, yeah. That's another thing I learned very... I thought it was funny because I didn't know this, and I was like, wow, I wish they taught us this. But I always thought an epidural was just a giant needle.
Yeah.
But no.
Just small?
It's not even. It's like a tube. So it's like, like a catheter.
Yeah.
So it's like that, but they put it in your spine, and it's continuously giving you medication.
Oh.
And they'll take it out like eventually, but it's not just a needle that numbs you for a couple of hours and then goes away. We're continuously giving you medication to block.
In your spine.
Yeah, in the
How did they figure
epidermis.
that? Doesn't sound healthy at all. How'd they figure this out? Like, oh my. So in the spine, like, is it numbing? That's why it's in the spine. It just kind of.
Yeah, it's blocking. Yeah, so obviously, like, a doctor has to do it because we're not equipped for that. But so I think that anesthesiologist, he actually came in, and because I had a patient who had one, and would come in and check on the person. So our job is to obviously monitor the medications, and then we do like a sensory check. So and it will fully block, and in some cases it'll block your motor skills.
Oh man, paralyzed.
So you can be paralyzed from the waist down temporarily. So not anything crazy, but yeah.
So when you localize that, especially in the spine though, and it's getting rid of pain and motor skills, isn't it wild how your brain is still able to function and keep that limb alive, like as far as blood circulation, you know, the veins and everything else are still working, and everything as far as life and keeping it operating outside of your conscious ability is fine. But then the conscious part of it, where you're trying to move or feel anything, is blocked.
Yeah.
Why? Do you know what the reason for that is? Oh. Why is it like the conscious part is numbed with a great big ass needle, but then your brain is able to kind of keep everything else going?
Are pretty cool.
Yeah, it's wow, man.
When we learn about this stuff, I'm like, wow, like our bodies are so cool. Like just everything it does for us that we don't even have to ever think about, and we don't even know half of us don't even know what's going on with our body, and it's doing its thing and.
Without you really doing...
Yeah, we're just living our life and it's doing it for us. Yeah.
So we were kind of skirting into, you mentioned a little bit about law and medical stuff and everything else. And I don't want to get into like the Bill C-36 and political spectrum of it. But having said that, I would like to try and get into a little bit more of your personal experience now with getting into nursing, the education part of it all. But in addition to that, you have your own experience dealing with the medical system. And I want to know a little bit about your opinion about the medical system, and maybe opinions about where you think it might be. There's areas of concern, but then also maybe some good things. I mean, you had to go to the States recently just to get a proper diagnosis that even though you're learning a lot about in the system about medical stuff, we seem to be lacking. And I know one of the comments that was made when you came back was the doctor that you had seen down in the US, is Texas, was shocked and surprised at the blood work, the lack of blood work and some of the information that should have been kind of researched that we're struggling with in Canada. And just one trip resulted in a far better understanding of what's going on with your struggles that could have been caught quite a while ago. So can you tell me a little bit about that? Like I guess to start with it, what exactly have you been having issues with, and then kind of explain to us a little bit about your story now with the medical system.
Yeah, so about a year and a half ago, I started getting some issues, pretty much mainly swelling on my face, my eyes, and my lips, which I still have. But
now, just to pause on that, you still have, but there were areas where it was times where I seen pictures. I'm not going to share those pictures. Yeah. But we can describe the pictures as far as the swelling that was in your face. Your eyes looked like they had been swollen shut, like you just finished a boxing match. It
looked like
it was brutal.
Looked like a mixture of somebody punching me and anaphylaxis.
Yeah, red, poofy.
Yeah, for sure.
And then really dry, super dry, like to the point where, I mean, you couldn't talk, you couldn't hardly eat, you couldn't do much of anything. Like, what was that? And what was the timeline? Like, was it you were fine, and then all of a sudden, poof, your face started swelling?
I think oh my gosh, I don't even know. I think at the beginning, it was like a month of like a little bit of dryness, a lot of like itchiness, and then it just kind of got worse. And then I have eczema, so I kind of contributed everything to that. I didn't really go in for anything because I've managed my eczema my whole life and kind of worked through that, tried a whole bunch of different things, and that didn't work. So then I did go see my family doctor, and they thought it was allergies. And then we tried to go down that route and nothing was working. So I tried to push a little further on that and ended up going to Edmonton for some allergy testing. That came up all negative, and then went to a dermatologist that I got referred to and tried to go down that route, and things got better but never got fully resolved. So I just kept pushing my doctor and really didn't get any results from that. So I stopped going, just because I felt like they weren't listening. They kind of pushed me off. And I've never really been one to go to the doctor a lot. So for me to go in was kind of like,
yeah, it's
okay,
needed.
I've tried everything. Help me out. Like, what can we do? So it was definitely frustrating. And then being in school, learning about like how we have to, where like our patient is our care. Without a patient, what are we here for?
Yeah.
So we really focus on like patient-centered care, and like my number one job besides like caring for you, obviously, is to be your advocate. And for me, like I really try and advocate for my patients and really just let them know like their concerns are valid, because at the end of the day, we can run all these tests, but you're the one living with it, right? So it was really hard for me to like go through all this and then just be like, wow, my doctor pretty much did like the opposite of what he was supposed to.
Yeah.
Like they didn't really take my concerns. And it's not like I'm a hypochondriac. It's not like I'm in there I'm not going to the hospital every day. I'm not,
Absolutely.
But like, I just felt like I'm young. I don't really have any health issues. And I'm coming to you and you won't even do a blood test on me.
Yeah,
like,
the most basic starting point, I guess, with problem solving.
So all I really got was allergy testing done. That was it. No other blood work, nothing. So when everything that I was prescribed for allergies wasn't working, we should have went to the next step and we never did. So that's where I was frustrated. And it just felt like I went in there and I was like, what are we supposed to do? And then we get like, oh, just blame your family genetics. Sorry, you're going to have to manage for the rest of your life. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not managing. I'm not managing. Like, I've done everything I can. Like, he even said, oh, you've done more than I would have even asked you to. And I'm like, wow. Okay, so nothing's changing. So from a patient's perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, what am I supposed to do? I can't like fight my doctor. And living in the North, we don't really have
options,
disposable doctors, you know what I mean? So like the fact that I have a family doctor is like great. Like I'm grateful to even have a family doctor. So we ended up going to Texas because my fiance's parents and family lived there, and I went to see my mother-in-law's doctor and immediately got blood work done, a full panel, all this stuff, and he was just like, I cannot believe they didn't do anything. Like, I gave him my test, and he's like, this is it?
That's all there is?
And I was like, yep. And he's like, this is all they did for you? Like, what? Like, he's like, just looking at you, like, that's it? So, and I
just
showed him.
disbelief, eh?
Yeah. And I remember, like, even days later, because we were there for about a week, days later, he had called my father-in-law and was just like, I'm just still thinking about that. Like, I cannot believe they didn't even do blood work on her. And like that, she traveled like all the way here just to see me. Like, yeah. So
alarming. And then it makes you wonder, okay, what is the hang up? Was it the system? Is it a regional? Is it an individual lack of abilities or care? I mean, that's where we can really kind of dig into it, because that's it's a question that everybody has. Now, where does this lie? It's just, I don't know if it's necessarily, and this is just me brainstorming because we all talk to different people. We're all very aware. I mean, all Canadians are very aware of, I think, where healthcare is. And sometimes it's kind of funny because we defend our healthcare in some areas. But then when the world, really, the globe, if you travel, everybody thinks their healthcare is next level awesome.
You're
and
like,
it's
hold
free.
on.
And then you want to kind of check them a little bit, because I think everybody thinks that our healthcare is on a level that we're not even close to. But having said that, there is a sense of where you want to kind of still defend it, because there's elements that we still have and enjoy, where you can go into a doctor and you're not stuck with a bill right away and whatnot. And I'd say about, well, before 5 years ago, like realistically 10 years ago, our healthcare system was far better off. I mean, it never was perfect. It just wasn't, but it was a whole lot better state than it is now. And it seems like the last 3-4 years specifically, it's really gone downhill. And a lot more examples and stories like what you're talking about are becoming increasingly more common. So it makes you wonder, where is this actually coming from? Because do you feel that it was an individual lack of care or understanding? Because, you were talking about maybe treating the patient with a little bit more attention and care. Like when random comments like, "Oh, shitty genetics." I mean, that's a brush off that.
Yeah, I mean, for my case, it was a little bit maybe the individual. But at the end of the day, I don't know. You know what I mean? Yeah, I'm not the answer for our healthcare problems. I don't even know where to even start to fix any of it. But I think a lot of it is our system is under a lot of stress, and we don't have enough people coming in to the workforce, and there's a lot of people like retiring. So we're in a constant state of shortage. And then here in the north, we don't have doctors. So our doctors have who knows how many patients at once, and they're just trying to keep up with it. So I think a little bit of it was just, burnout, maybe.
100%.
I could imagine how much burnout is real. And then just, in the grand scheme of things, my case isn't that bad. I'm not hospitalized. I'm not, I'm still living my day-to-day life. But, so maybe, I don't know.
With something that was able to be addressed on such a very easy level, imagine when the complications start to increase, the level of care, attention, resources, follow through, all of that kind of stuff. It doesn't get better. Prioritizing usually is in the moment, trying to get from one patient to the other. Yeah. So there's a lot there that I think, I don't want to get too far into it, but I think if there's a message out of all of that, I hope anybody in a position like an MLA or MP, whether they're opposition or actually part of government, it should be just another example of where maybe there should be some attention being paid to our healthcare system, because the trajectory, if you're to look at a plot or a stat, the direction it's going definitely isn't positive. It's just, I think, starting to pick up a little bit of a pace in the downward trend. Yeah. So now we got to follow up with how do you feel now entering, this profession, right? As far as now your place in it and the awareness of, okay, eyes wide open. Have you had moments of pause, or do you what's your opinion or your mindset on it?
I've never doubted going into nursing. And I think for me, every single time I'm in a clinical setting, I love it. I thoroughly enjoy what I'm doing. I could be at the beginning, at the beginning of my schooling, we were working in long-term care, and our scope was so small. And I remember we're not allowed to do anything out of our scope. So at this time, we weren't allowed to transfer people. So from the bed to a wheelchair, or we use lifts to move people sometimes, and we weren't allowed. And I remember one of my classmates, the carer was like, "Oh, can you put the loop on the lift?" We're like, no, we can't do it. And we were so scared because they're pressuring us to put and we can't do it. And looking back, I'm like, oh my gosh, it was a little loop.
Just so
that we could just boop.
For something that was connected to the patient, and then you were hooking it onto the lift?
A sling almost.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like a net. There's obviously a whole bunch of different ones, but there's one that kind of looks like a hammock, or some that has a little hammock chair And then you just hook it up to the machine and it can lift them up and you can move them and different things, but you've got to be trained to use them. And we weren't at the time, and we were like mortified because we're like, they were trying to get us to. And my instructor is like, oh my gosh, I don't know how she kept a straight face through all of this, because looking back, I'm like, wow. And she even said, like, at the end of the semester, just think back on everything, because you guys are going to like be like, really? Like, and we laugh at ourselves, because it's
in
just
the
like,
moment seemed like a whole lot worse.
We're like doing all of our readings, and obviously like the readings and your like modules and everything are like acting like the smallest little thing is like life or death. So we're like, oh my gosh, if we do it wrong and all this stuff. And then in the grand scheme of things, it's like, okay, well, we definitely overthought that. So that's just like, we always like to like look back at like how much we've learned that way. But I think all in all, like, I thoroughly love what I'm doing. I'm excited to enter the workforce. I'm excited to see different areas of nursing, because I haven't really been exposed to a whole lot. And I think the type of care we give is a lot different in a rural setting than like in a city. And I'm actually really interested to see what like different areas look like, because even talking like with Gabe's family has like a lot of nurses. So I'm always talking to them, asking them, I'm like, what's it like? Because I was talking to my sister-in-law, and she's like, I don't do any of that. She's like, we don't even have to worry about that. She's like, the techs do that. And she's like, I'm grateful for them because we don't have to do that. But like, she's like, paper charting? You guys paper chart? That's so archaic. She's like, I roll around a computer with me. And so the care is so different here. But I'm kind of glad for while I'm learning, because
100%.
I'm learning everything. I'm learning how to do all of that. And she's like, oh, I don't have to do that. She's like, of course I've learned how to do it. She's like, I'll never have to do that. And I'm like, yeah, I might not have to do it later on in my career, depending where I work or live or whatever. But in terms of learning, I'm learning pretty much at my capacity and my scope. And I'll be able to practice that when I graduate. And I think that gives me a little bit of the ability to care for my patients in a different way. I think there's pros and cons. Obviously, like for her, she can just focus on her job and just focus on her certain skills, which is great. But for me, I like it because it really helps with like continuity of care, instead of having multiple people coming in and not really forming a relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm doing all of this for my patient. Of course, other people are helping other professionals and stuff, but you start to build like a little bit of a relationship with them, which I think is really crucial, because like you're pretty involved intimately in their care, depending on what they're in for and how long they're in for. And I mean, they're people, right? So building that connection is really nice. And I think it really helps recovery. Right?
It does. And I think it also kind of lends itself to where when you understand something a lot better, like if you actually know and understand a thing, you're going to be able to remember it for a lot longer. And then also the variations that you can use to apply it to a thing. Right. And in the moment when you don't have the perfect scenario, like what happens if, like, I mean, I'm just spitballing examples, but I mean, if you're relying on a piece of machinery that's battery powered because it's mobile, or if there is a glitch in the system or something like that, then what do you do? It's almost like when you go to a store and all of a sudden ATM, your iPad doesn't work. Yeah. They can't even, cashiers don't know how to issue receipts and do it by hand. Whereas at least you have that foundation that you are able to be a little bit more nimble in the moment and adapt and have a better understanding of how to be able to perform your job properly. Yeah.
I mean, there's pros and cons, obviously, to both. And definitely. I don't think I would be able to, like, say which one's better than the other until I even worked in both scenarios. Yeah. But even, like, for us, like, for an example, the paper charting, that's my normal. I'm used to that. It's no issue. But I can see how having everything electronic is super beneficial because multiple people are able to access it. And if somebody's seen like different clinics or at different hospitals within a period of time, it's all in one area. Nothing's getting lost. You get a full picture, so then you can really figure out, okay, how did we get here? What's happening? What can we do? Whereas with us paper charting, I mean, we're all fighting for that buck.
Yeah, exactly. So diagnosing is a little bit more cumbersome in a scenario like that.
I mean, yeah, we don't personally diagnose.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah. But definitely pros and cons.
Well, we are getting close to an hour here, and I thought we can start wrapping up that part, unless there's something that you want to mention on that end of things. I think that was a pretty, I hate to cut it short because I think we're on a pretty good roll there. Super interesting. But let's, before we go move on, I guess it goes without saying on the record, I'm wicked proud of you. Wicked proud. I think it's pretty cool to see how you're able to manage, I think, very difficult situations and high pressure in the moment, moments that it's all on you and you're managing it. So you're able to take the presence of mind and skills that you've developed up to that point to be able to keep pushing through. And that's where a lot of people stumble and, quitting, frustration, all that other stuff become a lot more prominent, and you're making it happen. So that's a testament to, just I think who you are as far as your abilities and your morals and how do you hold yourself accountable, because in those moments you don't really have a lot of anybody else to push you through except for, a certain mindset. You're in your own head. So that's amazing. It's a job well done, and I think it's going to serve you well.
Thank you. As much as I'd like to take that just for myself, I do have a lot of support, and I don't think I'd be able to do any of this without it. So,
well, that's good to mention for sure. But what I say stands true. So the other thing is, I guess, as we've been kind of going through over the last couple of years, I guess with the podcast itself now, we should, with episode 100, we should maybe touch on, I guess, where the direction of this whole thing is going, because it started out at the very beginning, I guess, with an idea. And I think when I first wanted to try this out, you were living at home, and I still remember asking what you and mom were thinking. I was like, hey, I'm thinking about a podcast, and what do you think? And I don't think you both really actually took me seriously on that, or what that really fully entailed. I don't think podcast was even a thing back. Well, it was not a thing, but not as.
I think you started doing it right when it was getting really popular.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the upward trend. I just got into it because this is a question that I get a lot. Why am I doing it? This was wildly out of character, especially at that time. A lot of people, man, let me tell you, even still are a bit surprised. Not as much anymore with those who know me. Podcast is almost a part of kind of what they think of now when you mention my name. Whereas before, it definitely was not. I had to touch on, I was in a place where I needed to figure out how to be able to address concerns. And I'm not a politician. I just seen a lot happening, particularly in the oil and gas industry. I think I wanted to really address a little bit more about the oil and gas industry, because at that time, COVID wasn't really a big deal. It was all about fossil fuels, and there were protests where people were hanging off of bridges, and there's pipeline blockages and railways were on fire, and people were complaining about pipelines and then complaining at the same time about the price of fuel. It going by rail, and oil and gas was a big deal. Let me tell you, it was being attacked and still is, even viciously. And when I first got into the industry, at that time, especially in BC, nobody even knew that anything north of Prince George even existed. I mean, on the news, it was Prince George weather, and that was it. It was like it was the end of the world. Oil and gas was not existent. Nobody even knew about oil and gas. They just thought about, Kuwait and that kind of stuff as far as oil and gas industry. And I seen a shift from that sense of awareness to where it was being attacked and our place and role within the global stage. And then in addition to that, the struggles that the oil and gas industry has had to overcome with a cultural shift. And the standard of application on a worker level when it came to, at the beginning, entry level workers, graduating class kind of starting in the industry. And at the beginning, I used to complain about, mom watching soap operas. And after a while, I just stopped that because I realized I was living more of a soap opera sometimes than what she was watching on TV. Let me tell you, you have, you've had a window into that. I took you out, like we said there in episode 1, where I brought you out to work when you were 16, and you've seen a few examples of that. I wanted to address that. I didn't know how to. So I thought, well, let's do a podcast. I wanted to legitimize it by making sure that, people like mayors and the political, I guess, element was in here because I needed to learn, and that was a good way for me to be able to approach it and bump the needle in some way. I also love this area, regardless of, I think the general perception of most people that live in this area. Yeah, I like it. I do. This area, I think, has a lot to offer, and I like the grit. I wish it was colder. It brings out better people that I get along with. It brings
out better people.
It does. It keeps, there's a barrier there, and that sounds brash, but I guess I don't know how to explain it. I like the fact that it takes a little bit of grind and grit to just live here. It brings out a certain type of mindset and amplitude, I guess. Whereas if you're just kind of here, and everybody complains no matter what. I mean, look how they complain in California when they got $1 billion everything, the weather is.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at us. We're complaining that we don't have snow because we're worried about all the fires. And then the minute it gets cold again, we're complaining because now it's
right
cold.
Because it's 25 below, yeah.
we complain about everything.
Absolutely. So, but I wanted to bump the needle in an area that I started to get concerned enough to where I was like, I got to do something. I have to do something, but what can I do? And of course, Joe Rogan was a massive, huge influence as far as I was like, well, this guy is able to talk for over 3 hours to a wild range of people, and everyone finds it interesting enough. Now, foolishly enough, I had the same opinion as everybody, where when I was doing the research, what do you need? You need a mic, and you plug it into a computer, and you hit record, and then away you go. You upload it somewhere, and
How'd that go?
Well, that's wow, I didn't realize the workload. Holy man. And I don't want to complain about it, but it's crushing in some ways, kind of like what you're dealing with school was, me, the podcast, the editing, everything that goes into it. And then there's work, and then there's personal life, and then we're on a quarter section. So there's, that element, and all of the different, trying to juggle and then make it feasible. And like you mentioned earlier, I was on the upward trend of where podcasts all of a sudden became popular. So everybody was doing it. And then also the censorship thing, I realized is actually a real deal. It's actually legit. I've had a few examples of in the last 2 years.
Your Instagram's always censored for something.
Yeah, it is. Something's happening with it. My YouTube's even worse. I don't even think it's all that polarizing, to be honest with you. I never really actually thought it was all that bad, but apparently some of it is somewhat polarizing. All of it seems like. So, you're fighting that. And that makes me want to do it more, because it's when people push against you, I can't not, I buckle down. The harder it gets, and the more people try and throw roadblocks in front of you, the more I can't help but I dig down, and sometimes I question if it's at my own demise, so to speak. But yeah, it's when the challenge increases, I just can't help but lean into it harder. So I think this is, and I have ideas, moving forward. This is episode 100, and it takes an episode like this to reflect on episode 1 and see what I've learned, and then it's easier to see and compare one to the other, right? One episode to another, you don't really see any difference. But now when you go episode 100 to number 1, look at where it is. Now you can take episode 100 and then in the future we'll take 200 with you and then we'll be able to compare, right? And that's the snapshots I think I need to focus on as far as what exactly is this about and where's the progression. And it also makes it easier if you need to kind of scale things back, and maybe, there are moments where you need to say, okay, enough is enough, right? You got to make knowledgeable decisions as far as how to make those adjustments. So I don't know what that all kind of wraps up to, but it kind of, I guess, more or less was, I felt there's a need. I have a lot of concerns. My concerns are even more of a concern now. The more I learn, the more I go, whoa, that things need to change. And I want to be a part of trying to make that change. And I think this is the healthiest approach with doing it. So that's why I do it.
I think also for you, like having the podcast is like a really unique way of like learning. Like you said earlier, you wanted to like be more knowledgeable and learn more. And I think instead of like, for what you want to learn about like politics and everything, it's kind of hard to get into if you don't know anything about it. Even myself, I'm like, oh, I don't know anything about politics. Don't ask me. So, but I think like interviewing people kind of like in this format is really good because you're doing your external research and everything that helps you, but you're hearing everybody's perspective on everything. And I think the amount you've learned from episode 1 to 100 is a lot.
Yeah, it is. And there's been episodes that have changed my perception on a lot of things in ways I didn't really think I was going to change my perception on. Politics is a big one. I used to hate the word politics and the word constituents and all that stuff, whereas it's not I understand it better. And I see how politics is on another level of importance that I never really used to. It used to agitate me and I couldn't be bothered with it. Whereas now I'm, there's quite a few episodes where I'm like, we need to get involved, right? And we do. I didn't really think that before. And I think that's probably part of where I actually started to realize I was kind of part of the problem in a lot of areas myself, right? As far as a Canadian citizen and my civic application. And yeah, so that's definitely where I think I was a little bit humbled. You said, use that word, and I like it. There's been areas where I'm like, ooh, I've been humbled. I've been checked a few times where I'm like, oh, I had that wrong. Yeah. And then you grow and learn from that.
Yeah. No, for sure. And like having the ability to keep an open mind is really huge because you've got lots of people with a lot of different opinions coming on, and obviously you respect everybody coming on, but being able to like listen to what they're saying with an open mind and then like taking in and reflecting, be like, okay, I don't agree with it, but this is why, or I do, that kind of, that solidifies something. Like that's a big skill. I think a lot of people
and
don't really have now.
People know, and I'm learning it. I didn't realize it was as much as a skill as it is. I'm learning it. But the weird thing about it is a lot of people, especially in long form, you have two elements that play after. You're fatigued, but it's a healthy fatigue. Like, when you work out and you're freaking tired.
Like, oh, I'm tired of thinking.
But it's like, it's well, it's kind of somewhat therapeutic. And it also gives you your ability to move forward because it categorizes, I think, your brain. When you get things kind of rolling around in your head, you always seem to start, it's a revolving door. You start from scratch, and then to be able to explain that into words allows you to be able to have a better understanding in a way where now you can get to the end of whatever your point is and move on. Instead of that being something that you're constantly hashing out in your head, and you come up with the perfect scenario, right? It's like an argument, perfect scenario. And if they say that, I'm going to say this. And, and then it comes to talking to that person and everything just goes blank.
Yeah.
But through a conversation, it forces you to be able to have a better understanding and elaborate. And that's the skill. And I think it's just a lot of people, well, if they don't have the skill, I think they have the concern that they're going to say the wrong thing. And it's an impossible situation. Like even just with what you were talking about earlier, with schooling and the medical experience, there's got to be areas of awareness where you're like, I don't want to really say the wrong thing because now I'm getting into a career that is, I don't want to sabotage myself before I even get started, right?
Yeah.
That's a real concern, and it's actually legitimate too. Like that's something that people really need to keep in mind. But you're able to manage through that and articulate, I think, your point of view without feeling like you compromised your ability to speak your mind, but then also not in a way where you are going to be attacked. I don't think, anyways. I didn't see or hear anything that would have caused concern for that. So that's it's a difficult thing to do.
No, for sure.
I didn't realize I had an accent.
You get commented on that a lot?
I do. Well, no, I had no idea I had an accent. I still don't think I really have an accent, to be honest with you.
I think that's just because we live here.
Well, if we have accents, how come everybody on TV and movies and radio and everything sound like us?
I don't know.
But then when you travel, everyone else has an accent and they say we're the ones with the accent.
I don't know. I know. I get that whenever I travel. It's like,
I do realize that talking with Gabe, I say a lot more than I realized. I'm more aware of that.
That and like how we pronounce things. I always see like videos on social media and stuff, and it's like, oh, yeah, I do that. Yeah. Or like, I'll get called out. I said bag one time, and they were like, bag. And I was like, okay.
Oh, isn't it weird when they point something out and then you have a hard time actually saying, well, how is I pronouncing that? Like bag? How do I actually say that?
Yeah.
What is it?
Yeah. And then you're like, wait, how do I even talk?
So let's do some other questions. Do you have a question? While I look this up? Yeah. What's your question about this? Fire away. Make it difficult.
Well, now you're putting me on the spot. Now I got to think of one.
I'll tell you what, while you're thinking about it, I threw out an hour and a half before we started this. I threw out the question about anybody who had a question to post it on social media. I just made a post on Facebook and then I posted on Instagram. And then anybody that submitted a question, and we bring that to this podcast, I'm gonna send them a mug.
Oh, a mug.
Yeah.
They can't see it, but there's a lot of mugs.
Actually, why don't you grab one real quick?
I'll grab a mug.
Yeah, whatever color you want there. And in the meantime, there's a couple of these questions, and I'm gonna start out with the top one here, Nicole Reed. So Nicole's gonna get a mug, and it looks like Nicole's got a blue one. So why don't you show a blue mug, and we'll show the one we're gonna send her.
This one or this one?
Oh.
There's two blues.
There's two blues. Put it. There you go. Actually, bring all the colors over here, and we'll just put them up in a line. So Nicole's question: if you could choose one thing your parents or grandparents preached to you, and you didn't follow but wished you had, what would that be? And is it too late? I had to start out with the hardest one. That's a Nicole. Big question. That is a question. That's a loaded question.
This one has like the smallest little writing.
What's that?
This one, look at it. It's so much smaller.
Oh yeah.
Promoting.
Yeah. I started with the Yeti ones, but that was costing me an absolute fortune. So we switched over to this brand. They're pretty cool and they're nice. You'll like them. They're awesome, but
they're all great.
Yeah. How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different colors. black, rusty orange, lime green.
Rusty orange.
What's that dark one there? You call it forest green, I
I'd
guess?
say forest green.
And then olive green, dark blue, and light blue. So Nicole, we'll have to see which one you want there, light or dark blue. I'll be reaching out to you and asking you here in a bit. But as far as your question, if you could choose one thing your parents or grandparents preached to you and you didn't follow but wished you had, what would that be? And is it too late?
Oh, man.
Oh, man.
That was a heavy hitter.
On the spot.
Okay, while you think of it,
Yeah.
one thing for me, this one's kind of more of a joke, but taking out the chicken.
Taking out the chicken?
Yeah, taking out I remember growing up, and Mom.
What do you mean taking out the chicken?
Mom would be like, she would leave, and she would make sure you take out the chicken, defrost the chicken or whatever.
Oh.
And I wouldn't, and I'd come back, and she'd be so upset. I'm like, what's the big deal? Like, it's just chicken. And now I'm like, if I don't take out the chicken in the morning and I'm at work or school, it destroys me. I'm like, oh no, what are we going to have for dinner? It derails your whole plans. I get it now.
Yeah, the new one now is dog food. If you don't let it thaw out proper.
Yeah.
Because you can't just throw it in the microwave because it cooks in it's not good. Letting it thaw. So do you thaw it out in water or do you just set it out in ambient thaw out kind of thing? On the counter, on a plate?
Well, I can't do that. I've got 2 cats.
Oh.
My one cat will eat it all, for sure. Depends. If I'm planning ahead, I will, the day before, put it in the fridge and let it defrost in the fridge. We try and do that. The water comes in handy. I do that.
Hot water, lukewarm, cold? It's cold, always cold.
Always cold water. You don't do warm or hot because then it starts the cooking process, and then it has more bacteria. Hey,
there you go. I hope someone else gets a little bit of use out of that little piece of information. I'm still struggling with that one from Nicole Reed. I want to get profound and cerebral on that, but
I'm trying to think of something.
There is one thing. I think one of the things that I remember is that when it came to financial management, that's a big one. I remember hearing a lot about just having a better understanding about books, being fiscally responsible and all of that. And I really did not pay attention. I always have like a mental image or understanding of where we sit financially, right? Like, okay, if you have $100 paycheck and all your bills equal, $70, $80 or whatever, the difference. And I used to be really good at that, but it doesn't take long before all of a sudden things start to grow, starting with families and then this and that and everything else. And it becomes a little bit more difficult to figure out where your funds are. And really where I was checked is where I knew we needed to get a better understanding of financials. So in Fort St. John, I went to the BDC, which is a bank for small business. And I paid like 10 grand for someone to help us go through our book work and whatnot. And the reason for that is because I've got a small business and it's more like a proprietor, but it's just me. And I've seen the value in just having a really good Excel spreadsheet. What the numbers can tell you blew my mind. And I was like, if I could have only done this earlier, I would quite literally be in a different place in life and standard of living and awareness and achievements and goals and your ability to navigate day to day. And I just took it for granted at the beginning. And I think that's where I needed to actually start, when it was simple and then build and elaborate off of that. And is it too late? I guess that was the other part. Is it too late? No, it is never too late. I don't think there's any time. I'm not too sure there's any example I could think of where it could be possibly too late. I think too late is something where it's just a matter of lazy. I don't think it's ever really too late.
No, I think no matter how old you are, you can learn.
Yeah. that would be something that I would hopefully pass on to you now too. I mean, not that I'm a good teacher when it comes to, but that's definitely one that I think would have been a bit of a game changer. There's a lot of examples, but thank you, Nicole, for that question. That was awesome. So another one here, Rockin' Ryan Olson. Okay, who and how did your life decisions and expectations shape your aspiration in personal life and career choices? Wow. I was expecting people to start chirping me here.
Wow. They want to know the questions of the world.
Yeah. Okay. Let's reread that. Who and how in your life decisions, expectations shaped your aspiration in personal life and career choices? I realized when I was younger, I never graduated. And so it didn't take me too long. Like, everybody has a past, and I think everybody has regrets, and everybody's happy that, you went the way you went through. And I don't regret or would change anything, I think, growing up or the direction that life took me. But I think those experiences shaped me in a way where I feel like I am far more determined, and I think I have a sense of awareness that I have now if I didn't go through those experiences. And the key, I realized how one little decision can quite literally impact the rest of your life without you even having any choice, because the choice was made, and once it's made, there's no going back. You just got to deal with it. So I think when you look back, there's certain points in your life where you're like, okay, that's where a certain decision took me in a direction. And one of them would be living in the Lower Mainland, not having any real knowledge or skill, except I had my youth and I was physically fit, and knew that dropping off resumes and trying to get a career for even minimum wage down there at that time, I was up against 300 people who drop off a resume. Mm-hmm. And so coming up to Fort St. John, and we talked about the oil and gas industry, quite literally saved everything. I had intense fear of being, 40 or 50 years old, living in a trailer park with nothing to my name. And I didn't know how to overcome that. So coming to the Fort St. John, I started in the oil and gas industry. I went through what some people would consider old school, and I look back on it with fond memories. I don't have PTSD or any ill will because of it. I'm fortunate that I went through there. And I remember my dad gave me the plane ticket, and it was a one-way ticket to come up here. I asked for it though, and he's like, I'll help you out. So to answer Rockin' Ryan Olson's question, who and how did your life decisions and experiences shape your aspirations, in personal life and career choices? So I think that kind of answers it. Experiences, we won't get into too much detail on any of that. But it was growing up and then moving to Fort St. John, and then starting a career in the oil and gas industry. And that took, when I came up, I was living at Ed's place in the Breezeway. He has 3 kids at the time. And my first job was at the dump, backing people into positions so they can drop their garbage off. And then I went to carpet cleaning for Ed. And then I had one day where I was like, it's not, this ain't happening. I can do this anywhere. This is quite literally something I can do in Hawaii or freaking Alaska. This is not something I'm doing. So then I went to the job place there. This is before Google. Made a resume.
Like the Employment BC?
Yeah.
Is it in the same building?
I think so.
Same little strip?
It's on the second floor. They had these old computers where you can make a resume. Mm-hmm. And so, first I went to the library, and I looked up at the library. They have an oil field directory book, like a phone book kind of thing. And so I looked up anything that had oil field in it in that book, and I wrote that down. And then I cross-referenced those names with the local phone book. So then I had a phone number and an address. And then I went to the unemployment place there on the second floor, beside the Lido.
Okay, it's not. I don't think it's the second floor.
Actually, I think it's a medical unit now.
So now
used to be an unemployment place.
About 2 streets down.
Oh, okay.
Kind of across from where the Salvation Army big tall building is.
Yeah.
It's literally across from there.
Oh.
Behind Browns.
At least they have it still.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I went there, made a resume for each company that I had written down. And then I got on my bike and I spent 3 days dropping off resumes. And the last one was to Grimes. And I think it was on the third day at 2 a.m. Garth Gould. He called me at 2 a.m. You want to go to work? Yeah, sure. When? I'm in your driveway. I was living in an apartment building. I'm like, oh man. So I went down and I hopped in his truck and we're staying in camp. And I'm like, I don't have a tent, man. He's like, I could see that disappointment on his face. He's like, no, that's not what I mean. He goes, well, you just pack and grab your toothbrush or whatever. So he came up and he helped clean up the kitchen a little bit. And so we went to work and, yeah, that was the beginning of my patch. That's a whole nother, but that was the beginning. So there's that answer. Hopefully that answers your question there, Rock and Ryan. And then here's an easy one. What's Amanda White? What is your favorite color of mug? My favorite color, I've got 2, black and burgundy, but I prefer my burgundy. So my favorite color of mug, I don't have the burgundy yet, but the closest to it would be that rusty orange one.
Oh.
Yeah, that's the color I like. You've seen my burgundy one.
I also have a burgundy one. And I have that pink one. The light pink one. That one is my favorite.
Is it?
Yeah, it's a nice mug. I like the color. It.
Well, these ones aren't Yeti mugs. The ones that you have are Yeti.
Oh, it's the OG mugs.
It is the OG mugs. One day, if Yeti wants to sponsor.
Yeah, sponsor us, please.
Yeah.
I like this green. The forest green.
Yeah. That's actually a nice color. I like that. Nice
color. I like
you
that
like
one.
The dark tones too, eh?
Yeah, and then that royal blue. Yeah.
This one?
No, that's navy.
This one? This lighter color.
I like them together though. I don't know. I like the blues. The blues are nice. This green's nice. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to switch over to Instagram here. There was a couple on there. Mm-hmm. So how many people? I got to make sure I remember that. So we've got Nicole's getting a mug. Rock and Ryan gets a mug. Amanda gets a rug. There's 3 there. Then over on Instagram, I've got one here. Brooklyn Violet. She comment for you, Kevin. Also, this is the one. Oh, this is to both of us. For you, Kevin, what did you wish you knew before starting in the podcast world? And then for you,
good one.
Kaylie, with having your dad in the oil and gas industry, do you feel your childhood has been different versus a child whose parents were in the oil field? Or weren't in the oil field, sorry. So let me just kind of re-ask that one. With having your dad in the oil and gas industry, do you feel your childhood has been different versus a child whose parents were not in the oil field?
That's 2 good questions.
Yeah, you go first.
Oh, you want me to go first?
Yeah, I want you to go
first.
first.
I want to think first.
A little bit.
Well, I think for myself, I mean, living in Fort St. John, it's really normal to have like your parents in some shape or form work in the oil field. So growing up, I didn't really think anything of it. But now, like talking to a lot of people, I think our lifestyle is pretty different just because, I mean, you spent a lot of time in camp growing up. So, I mean, now you're home a lot more. So it's a little different. But I mean, a lot of the times you were gone in camp and then we would talk on like the phone, or I remember even like for birthday, you weren't there. So you had sent, my birthday's close to Valentine's Day. So you had sent Mom a Valentine's gift and then myself a gift with flowers to our hotel room because my birthday was in a hotel. So, like, I remember like little fond pieces of that, but to be honest, I don't know if it's normal. I don't remember a lot of like the early childhood years, even though I'm really young still. But I don't think it was wildly different. I mean, I still have a close relationship with you, and I don't think you missing some parts of my life wildly changed me in any shape or way. I think if anything, it was probably harder on you than me, just because like you probably remember it a lot more vividly and felt like you had missed a lot of key milestones in my life, or like felt bad because you weren't there. But I don't think it wildly impacted me. And like for me, it was normal. Like Fort St. John, that was normal. I think maybe if I were to live somewhere else, it would have been a little bit harder. But everybody's parents were in the oil field. That was just, that's just how it is. Yeah. So I didn't think anything of it. But like talking to other people, and they were like, oh, like even like Gabe, he's like, camp? Are you kidding me? Like, how do people spend a month in camp and not talking to anybody? I'm like, even now I'm like, I don't know, that's normal. And he's like, no. So like, and I think now growing up and like talking to a lot of different people, like I have a different, like a perspective of like, okay, that's just normal to this area, but not necessarily to other people who grew up. But I guess it's no different than other parents who maybe had worked and had to go away a lot. So, I mean, I don't know, unless you both had stayed home. But I mean, I don't think it was drastically different. And I think I was able to enjoy a lot of things other people didn't. I mean, when you were home for a little bit. So I remember we did lots of camping and like we did lots of trips and stuff. So, I mean, I think we had like a lot of family quality time growing up. I don't think I necessarily missed out on like having my parents. So I don't think it was wildly
It's an interesting question. I think a lot of people
like it, though.
Yeah. I think coming from my perspective as far as the parent, for sure, there were definitely, I think, areas that you really are concerned about as far as the involvement, because it seems like there's a vacuum within the family unit. And then when you come back home, of course, being that parental presence just showing up, it shifted the routine and energy or dynamic, and way more than I ever thought until later on in the years. And so that was something that I had never even been aware of. So it was always, well, like you said, we'll go travel, and it was a quality of time. And I think it was justified because the sacrifice in going to work, allowing mom to stay at home and be that parental presence there that not a lot of people were able to afford, even if you were to be in the Lower Mainland. It was like 6.5 maybe a different flavor of, a different form of parenting. And we thought, well, at least you have one full-time and then one that isn't quite full-time, but definitely engaged or committed, right? And that was how you made it work. What I didn't realize was how it just, and then I guess the other part of it was, what do they care? I'm the one who has to go to work. I'm the one who has to get up. I'm the one who goes out at, through 40 below to 40 above, and the one, and I think that, I have a different opinion on that now, but that's kind of, I think, the mindset, and I didn't realize the impact later on, me being away versus home. I think it's far more substantial than some people realize, but it's not the end of the world either. I think it's just how you manage it. But it does have an impact. That's a pretty interesting question, Brooklyn. Thanks for that one. To answer your first part of that though, what did you wish you knew before starting in the podcast world? Well,
lots of reflection this episode.
So starting out, it was like anything else. I had no idea even what to get. Joe Rogan, of course, everybody knows who he was, and even still the same when I started. So I was like, I'd watch an episode and I'd pause and I'd zoom in as to see what kind of mic he was using. And I started with just the audio. I think if I was to switch, I would figure out a way to be able to make this more than just, the workload can't just be on one person. I think starting out, it's like the financials, right? If you don't know a thing, then I think you should, before you launch, you should do a lot of the research and do dry runs that aren't public to be able to figure out how to kind of get it going. And I always focused on the quality of the studio and all of that to offset the experience. But I think having somebody just to bounce ideas off of, to be able to figure out, there's a lot of nuance that goes, especially with so many podcasters out there. You need to be able to figure out a way to be able to do that in a way where you don't have burnout or you want to quit, because the workload is going to be, no matter, everybody knows, it's going to be a whole lot more challenging than what I expect. But you need to make more definitive goals as to why you're doing what you're doing, and said, okay, the benchmark isn't a point of where I'm going to quit or not. The benchmark is where it's reflection to figure out where you need to be able to refine what you're doing, because it's important to have that in advance, or burnout is going to start in the form of lack of quality. And then it's just a slow death. You got to be able to increase the quality without hitting a stagnant point of maintaining a certain quality and focusing on the content getting out there. You need to always have a manageable workload in a way where you can improve on a certain thing as you learn and you grow. That's not something I took into consideration. It was always a wild workload. And then I had a hard time as I was learning to be able to add and refine. So small examples would be, especially when I got into the video, people wanted a breakdown. Okay, you need to do reels. We want chapters. We want this. And it's like, man, there's no way, right? But if you have enough foresight, okay, this is how I'm going to go do it. And you figure all of that in advance in a way where you have at least a 20% room for error to be able to take on that new learning curve. You'll find out that as you do that and you have that cushion, you can absorb, I think, that learning curve that takes you to 100% working capacity until it's streamlined to where now it becomes a little bit easier. And then when you learn something else, it brings you back up to 100% capacity. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question, Brooklyn. And then I'm going to hit one more question here, and then I think we can wrap it up. This is from Sebastian Marion. Sorry. What motivated you to start a podcast? Actually, I think we hit that one already.
Yeah.
Right? So that's 5 questions. There you go. Anything else? I think we're getting near the end here. You have any other questions?
Oh, I don't know. I think they kind of hit it on the questions. Made us have to reflect quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, why don't we wrap it up? Yeah, I think this has been a good time. Episode 100. I think we smashed it out of the park. It's good. I've got a, here's,
oh boy.
You see these little hot buttons?
Yeah. Oh no.
I never use these things.
Anymore?
Well, period. I've never really used them, but Mike Davidson came over and we had some whiskey. By the way, that isn't whiskey.
I was like filling it back up. It's not whiskey. It's iced tea. It's dandelion root tea.
Yeah. Yeah.
Me over here just downing glasses.
She's holding her whiskey and Kevin's not even drinking. What the hell?
They're like, wow, she holds it well.
So Mike Davidson was over and we were, of course, the other thing about this space that's kind of cool is a lot of people stop by and they all want to talk. They all want to be here, which is really cool because it's separate from a living quarters and we drink whiskey. So Mike stopped by and we did a bunch of little audio notes.
Oh no.
And I never listened to them or play them. So I'm going to play a few here. The first one is the intro. So that's, I think, what most people are familiar with. We'll play that real quick. How'd that go, Kaylie? And then we've got the outro, which is very similar, but it is different. So that one actually, I used to play those two when I was just audio, strictly. And then when I got into the video, I started switching things up. So I don't play those quite as often anymore. Then I've got another one here. It just says Kevin on, I can't even remember what this one is, but Kevin Unscripted. So that's Mike Davidson. And then anybody who's familiar with this one, the Taylor Hill. So Mike Davidson, he drives heavy truck, and so he called me one day, and I recorded. This is a voicemail that he left.
On tonight's episode of Kevin Unscripted, there's fucking idiot truck drivers spun out on South Taylor Hill. Moron.
The funny thing is, when
thank you,
I
Mike.
was coming up here, there was a semi stuck around that corner.
Was it an Arrow truck? Those B trains?
I don't look at them.
The ones that look like they got the trailers that are like inches off the ground.
No, it was like.
You don't want to throw anyone under the bus there?
No, I honestly, it was like the ones.
Tanker?
Yeah.
As a tanker?
Yeah.
Well, Taylor
Always
Hill.
stuck. Drive shaft corner.
But they sand it. Like Taylor Hill, it's bad.
Nice though. They've got it cleared up.
Yeah.
It's a nice ride.
You used to have to travel to Taylor Hill every day on your own for years.
Yeah.
School bus right to when you had your Jeep.
Yeah.
Is that the reason why you moved into town?
No. Okay.
You didn't want to travel to Taylor Hill?
Imagine, not the Taylor Hill. Imagine me I have to be at clinical for 6:30 on the dot. Like I have to be on the floor ready to roll on the dot, 6:30.
Yeah.
So I like to be there early and then everything. Could you imagine having like waking up that early? Ugh.
I do. Actually,
I know you do. And I say that and I feel so bad because we have a girl in my class who actually lives in Dawson. And she travels every day. Bless her heart. She travels every single day to Fort St. John. And then on the days we have clinical, she actually stays in town because who wants to make that drive?
Yeah.
That, and then when I was in school and work and everything, it was just so much easier to be in town for all of that.
100%. And the price of fuel. Driving to and from.
Expensive.
I don't think people realize how
I'm a
much.
broke college student.
I've had to pay $5,000 fuel bills in 1 month. Just it adds up. It adds
gross.
up. So okay, 2 more buttons and then we'll wrap it up. This one here is also from Mike.
More modulation.
I don't even know what that means.
More modulation.
More modulation.
We need more modulation. This one's mine. This one's kind of.
He says it's funny until it's me.
Yeah. Okay. We won't play that one again.
I like that one.
Yeah. Oh, that's horrible. What's this one? Oh, these ones are.
Are those like stock?
No,
sounds?
those are this is from Prism. I had Al Harlow on, and so Spaceship and what's this other one here? Armageddon are 2 of the songs that Prism sang, and Al was on here, and I used it for part of his episode. And then I said, hey, do you mind if I throw this in there? Because you don't want the copyright thing, right? And so I put it in here so it was quick reference. So anyways, little fun fact on that one. All right. Okay.
All right.
Take care.
I think that's the end of
We'll
it.
see ya. We're wrapping it up. Thanks again for coming on, and we'll see you at episode 200.
Oh man, they can't get sick of me.
No.